No. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'hakol neh b'borei.
L'chaim.
L'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim. A good tavach and a good yontif. Even though we're evening time now, but we are still part of the yontif, 2-day holiday. Yud-Tes Chav Kislev. Alter Rebbe is released from prison, and we're celebrating. We celebrated this morning learning Tanya, starting the new cycle, and now we celebrate the Parshah. L'chaim. So we go into this week, the longest single narrative in the entire Torah, story of Yosef and his brothers. Born Yosef to the, okay, why does it say connection has timed out? Everything's good. All right.
But we don't have it on the screen yet.
No, I didn't put it on the screen, but
Oh.
yeah, you see just us on the screen.
That's right. Never mind.
Yeah, you're seeing what you're supposed to see.
Are we supposed to have our phones out?
No. I'm going to turn this around the screen, so you're going to see the screen over here. Yeah, he's our IT. He's Mr. IT. So he's just checking to make sure that we're okay. So again, the longest narrative in the entire Torah, based on the son of the favorite wife of Yaakov, who he becomes the favorite son, brings jealousy amongst the brothers, and as things go from bad to worse, eventually he gets sold into slavery. And it begins with Yosef. Well, it begins beforehand, but the troubles actually begin when Yosef seeks out his brothers and finds them, and they throw him into a pit. So let's get that reading over here. Give me a moment. Let's figure this out. I'm going to share that. Okay. Let's see if this is going to work. Is it working? Look at that. Okay. Now let's see if I do this. And it's still working. So let me turn this now around. So then you can see. All right, can you see? Yeah?
Yep.
Okay, so let's go to the reading in this week's Parshah. Now it came to pass when Yosef came to his brothers, they stripped Yosef of his shirt, of his fine woolen coat that was upon him, and they took him and cast him into the pit. Now the pit was empty, there was no water in it. And they sat down to eat a meal, and they lifted their eyes and saw that, and behold, a caravan of Ishmaelites was coming from Gilad, and their camels were carrying spices, balm, and lotus, going to take them down to Egypt. And Yehuda said to his brothers, what is the gain if we slay our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites. Excuse me. But
Are you recording?
Sorry?
Are you recording?
It's on Facebook, no?
I don't know. Someone just asked if you were recording, so I just wanted.
It's on Facebook? Yeah. So that was the connection that was interrupted.
Okay.
Because it did. Just turn this around for me. Sorry. Okay. Thank you. All right. Things couldn't go just so easy. I did that, and I remember I mentioned that there was some kind of interruption. Okay.
Damn.
What's going on over here that I don't have? Not giving me. Oh, there it is. Okay, got it. No, it says stop live stream. It says it's live streaming. It's saying there it's live streaming. Can you look on Facebook? Let me look on Facebook and see if it is.
Yes, I do see it.
It is live streaming.
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right. Look at that. Everything was perfect. And yet. Okay. Now am I going back over here? Stopping the share. I'm going to go back to share. Yeah, sharing it. Okay. How do I get? Okay. You want to go here? We're good. Perfect. Okay, turn it around, please. Yeah. Or this way. Okay, there. All right, we're good. All right, so we're verse 26. And Judah said, "This brother was gain that if we slay our brother and cover up his blood, come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites. But our hand shall not be upon him, for he is our brother, our flesh, and his brothers hearken." The Midianite men, merchants, passed by, and they pulled and lifted Yosef out of the pit, and they sold Yosef to the Ishmaelites for 20 silver pieces, and they brought Yosef to Egypt. So let's look a little more closely, and we'll have Rashi in a moment to look at this, but that the words, and the pit was empty, and there was no water in it, which is, of course, a redundancy, right? If the pit is empty, obviously means there's no water in it. Why does it have to say that? So let's look at the Talmud, which Rashi quotes. Oops. Okay, it says now the pit was empty and there was no water in it. Since it says now the pit was empty, do I know that there was no water in it? For what purpose is the Torah right? There was no water in it to inform us that there was no water in it, but there was snakes and scorpions in it. So what's your question? Okay, we have the answer, what the verse is saying in the Torah, but this itself raises a question. What would that be?
Okay, so he wasn't drowned, but he might have been bitten by these animals.
Fine, but what's the question?
How did he survive?
Okay, I don't know if that's a question. You know, Daniel in lion's den, he survived, so Yosef can survive. I'm not certain that's a question.
What is the significance of saying why there are snakes and scorpions in the pit?
Okay, but why doesn't the Torah just come out and say it? Why in this roundabout way there was no water? You know, it was empty and there was no water. Just say that it was empty, but only snakes and scorpions were inside. So say that instead of hinting to it in a roundabout way.
Well, it didn't hint it. It said that there was no water, did it?
And the verse says that it was an empty pit and no
Yeah,
water,
mhm.
right? No water is redundant. So therefore, we learn out from it. It was empty of water because, a pit can be full of water. That's a natural thing, right? But it was full of something else, snakes and scorpions. So just say that the pit was full of scorpions. I'll just say that. Why does the verse do that? Simple question, right? No? It's like too simple of a question that you're a little puzzled.
Yes, it's like a
literally
trick
simple
question. It's like,
It's not a trick question.
You
What
became dehydrated
do you mean?
with no water, How long could you survive without water?
But you're reading into the story. You're all reading into the story something. Don't read into the story.
Maybe
Just
there were-
read the story itself.
maybe
Don't.
there were pits that when it would rain, the water would gather up in the pits. So that's where they would have water. It would be a reservoir of water.
Well, if it says that it was an empty pit, it means that there was no water in it.
Mhm.
So therefore, the
It repeats
redundancy
it.
of saying that
Maybe
there's no
it's-
water, we learn out from that there wasn't water in it, but snakes and scorpions. So the question is, just say clearly snakes and scorpions were in there. If
By
that's
saying there's no water, they would letting you know he wasn't going to drown, that the story would go on.
It goes on in the next verse.
But we don't know that
That's
when
not
they're
an answer.
saying it.
Wait. We don't live in a vacuum of one verse. No. You can't say that.
Or is it maybe there's pits in that area that do fill up with water when it rains, and they become.
Yeah, but if the verse says it's empty, that means it's empty.
But we're just telling us that it formerly was a water pit.
No. But one second. First of all, that's not what the verse is coming to tell us. The verse is coming to tell us that there were snakes and scorpions in there, but it's not saying it clearly. So just say clearly. Finished.
That's the question.
That's the question. Okay. In fact, there were snakes and scorpions in there. So just say it instead of in a roundabout way. That's all. Simple. No?
So it wasn't empty because there were snakes and scorpions.
Exactly. So just say it.
But the Torah doesn't
But
waste
that's the
words.
Oh, that no. What does it mean? The Torah? Of course, it doesn't waste words, but that's not wasting words. It's being more direct. So obviously, folks, there must be something here that the Torah wants to tell us in the fact that it's going in a roundabout way to speak about the snakes and scorpions. Okay, there's a message over here. What it is, we're going to learn, but we have a question to begin with. Okay, we're good, folks. We're good. Okay. So another question that I'm sure is bothering you.
That's good. Okay, let's hear it.
Helen, you like that, huh?
It's fine. It wasn't bothering me.
Well, now it's going to bother you. Now it's going to bother you. How could the brothers do such a thing? Throw him into a pit with snakes and scorpions, putting him into danger. In their estimation, he's not Daniel in the lion's den, right? Right? He's their brother Yosef, right? They had a history with him.
Well,
So-
they were tremendously jealous of him. Plus, he was sort
Whoa,
of
whoa, whoa.
boasting about
What
himself.
are you
They were all bowing
Oh,
down
good.
to him and everything.
That's good for a good rationalization.
He really he egged them on.
I said that's a good rationalization. That's
And
like,
Joseph
that's
made it clear-
sounds like what's something going on in the Middle East,
You think?
Well, that's a rationalization though.
And Jacob made it clear he was his favorite son.
Okay, therefore
Therefore,
they were right to throw him into a pit with
No, but
snakes
I'm
and
just saying
scorpions.
they
Therefore they were right.
no.
So then the
right,
question.
wrong, no.
Oh, so Helen, so the
Mhm.
question's a question. So the question remains a question then, right?
Mhm.
How could they do that? Right? Okay, true, they had a long history, right?
Mhm.
And he was saying things about them that he was liable for punishment. Now, he was right. He was saying things about that they were he was taking the brothers were taking what's called Avram and Achai, taking a limb from a live animal, and about their other conduct, sexual impropriety, and so on, which in the end was false. And why Yosef did that, that's not a discussion we're going to have today. That itself is a question which needs to be addressed, but we're not going to address that today. But what we want to address is the brothers, what was their rationalization for what they did? So if we look at the Sepharno, so he explained something like Helen wanted to say, had a good rationalization. They were protecting themselves from physical and spiritual harm. Text number 2. Excuse me. The brothers thought that Yosef was liable to kill them, and that he was now coming to inquire after their welfare, but not coming to inquire about their welfare, but rather to come up with a libelous scheme. Or perhaps he was going to cause them to sin so that their father would curse them, or God would punish them, and thus leave Yosef as the father's exclusive son. So that's what they're afraid of, right? The Ohr HaChaim makes a similar point, describing Yosef in the brothers' eyes as false witnesses and making false accusations against them, as we see in text number 3 over here from the Ohr HaChaim HaKodesh. We can suggest that the brothers that judged Yosef with the law of plotting witnesses. Plotting witnesses means false testimony that you're giving, right? Indeed, Yosef had brought libelous claims against them to his father in the past, pressing charges on violations that incur capital punishment. He had claimed that they ate Aver min Achai, a limb from a live animal, and they had illicit relations, sins that carry capital punishment. So the brothers judged Yosef as plotting witnesses, thus absolving them from heavenly retribution should they kill him, for they knew that he was planning to kill them. So simply, the Ohr HaChaim is saying it's self-defense, right? Now, these explanations seek to justify the brothers in their behavior and to absolve their responsibility, right? They're not absolving them, because in the end, it was wrong what they did. What their initial thought was, what they in fact did, right? This is just explaining why they did it. Explaining doesn't absolve you. It just gives you an understanding of the rationale that was going on through their minds and what they thought, why it was warranted, right? And how do we know that they know that it's themselves that it was wrong? Because later on, when they do meet their brother incognito, they recognize it. And now Joseph's brothers saw that their father had died, and they, perhaps Joseph, will hate us and return us to the evil that we did to him. Actually, sorry, this is after Yaakov had died, and there was already a reunion of the entire family in Egypt when Yaakov came down. So they commanded messengers to go to Yosef to say, your father commanded us before his death, saying, so shall you say to Yosef, please forgive now your brother's transgression and their sin, for they did evil to you. Now please forgive the transgression of your servants and the God of your father. Yosef wept when they spoke to him. Right. So they recognized they were wrong. Right. Well, we just gave us some kind of at least understanding that they just weren't, stam murderers, or had murderous intentions, right? It was based on something. So the question, though, is, and as you saw from the Ohr HaChaim, it was based on halacha. They saw him giving libelous testimony that could incur upon them a death sentence. And when you give libelous, it's called edim zaymimim. When you give such libelous testimony, that becomes the law against you. What you tried to do to them, that's what gets done to you. As long as it wasn't done to them, but that's the law. So therefore, there's a halachic parameter for this, right? But yet it was wrong. Because in the end, halachic parameter is done by halachic authorities that have no bias. Have no bias. So they went wrong, right?
So who would have been the authority at that time to pronounce judgment?
I don't know. Good question. I'm not certain.
Even the Sanhedrin had 23 judges, Dayanim.
Hmm?
Even the Sanhedrin had 23 Dayanim,
Right.
and they were only, what, 11? 10, because Benjamin wasn't born yet.
No, but he was born, but I mean, it was only the six brothers
Oh, the
that
six.
from Leah.
So even less.
Right. And but remember, this is before the giving of the Torah.
Right.
So it's, it's based on the concept, but it's not, the complete halachic. It's not based completely on the halachic ruling. And in any case, they're wrong. It's just giving an understanding of what the thought process, what they thought, what was a justification, which in the end is not a justification, right? It's not a justification. So, but the question is, how could they miss so easily, so badly, right? So let's go into this. Even they were making the halachic rendering themselves. Even that, how were they off the mark, right? So in a few words, we could say that they looked at a halachic ruling and Jewish law in cold fact, and not understanding that comes together with it is, shall we say, the spirit of the law. And they were missing the spirit of the law. Now, what does it mean, the spirit of the law, as opposed to the hard facts of the law, right? So we need to understand, what does that mean? So we're going to back up for a moment and to understand Torah itself. What is Torah teachings? So Torah teachings are literally God's wisdom. Literally his wisdom. Literally his will. Now, if that's the case, it has an infinite quality to it, an infinite nature to it, infinite wisdom to it. As the prophet says, Isaiah, right? Do you not know? If you have not heard, an everlasting God is the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth. He neither tires nor wearies. There is no fathoming his understanding. And elsewhere in Yeshayahu, it says, my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways, says God, right? So if that's the case, we're talking about halacha that is divine wisdom, that's an infinite wisdom, God's wisdom. It's way beyond us. How can we grasp it to begin with? How do we get that? Human brain is limited. God is infinite in his wisdom. So the truth is, like the prophet says, we can't unless God favors us and shows us that we can and gives us a way that we can. In other words, if we were to grapple and to try to figure it out, we can't. But God, in his kindness, what he did was he took something infinite and he squeezed it and put it into a box. Infinite wisdom that you could carry in a box called the Torah. The word is in Hebrew, tzimtzum, as the Alter Rebbe says in chapter 4 of Tanya, which we'll come to shortly. Hashem made a tzimtzum. He contracted. He took something infinite, and now he put it into finite terms and ideas, put it into a box, infinite. Now, how can that be? Only God can do that, right? And he gifted that to us. In other words, we couldn't on our own get anything of him, but because he gifted us the opportunity, because he took the infinite of him and put it, so to speak, in a box, right? And box meaning a limitation, a container, the Torah, right? And the words of Torah, which is a container, right? A word in Hebrew is teva. Teva is a container, right? As a word contains an idea, right? And that's what God did.
Rabbi,
Yes.
does it also include the concealment of God in the Torah?
Leave that for a moment. Leave that thought for a moment because it'll confuse things right now. Okay, but good point. We'll try to get there. The important point right now is how can we have access to anything about God? Is only because God gives us access. He takes the infinite of him, right? And he gives it to us, as the Talmud tells us. Rabbi Yosef said at first, Moshe would study Torah and then forget it until God gifted it to him, as the verse states, and God gave to Moshe as he concluded speaking with him. Prophet compares and makes a comparison between Torah and water. Right. Just as water naturally descends from a high point to a lower one, the wisdom of Torah's source on high is absorbed only by those whose spirits are lowly and humble. As the Talmud tells us over here, right? That's why Torah is linked to water. Whoever's thirsty, come and drink. Drink the words of Torah, right? But water, and why is it Torah symbolically like water? Because it comes from a high place and as water goes to the lowest place. That's where it comes to. So you want the water, it's in the lowest place, meaning a humble person, right? As the Alter Rebbe expounds this idea in Tanya. God squeezes infinite wisdom and desire into 613 mitzvahs. This is from chapter 5 of Tanya, of the Torah, and the various halachas, as well as many words of scripture and midrashim from the sages. This way, the human soul would be able to understand and grasp the mitzvahs with her intellect and be able to observe them as much as possible in thought, speech, and action. Thereby, the Torah integrates into the human's 10 emotional capacities as well as the 3 external methods of expression of thought, speech, and action. For this reason, the Torah is compared to water. Water descends from a high place to a lower place. In the same way, Torah descended from a lofty place, namely the desire wisdom of God. For God and his wisdom are one. No intellect can truly grasp him. Right. So we have something paradoxical over here. What's that? Water comes from on high, right? It comes from the top of the mountain, comes from the highest point, right? So on one hand, it is the loftiest, it's God's wisdom, it's his will, but yet it only finds its place in the lowest place, meaning, metaphorically, in a humble individual. In other words, the only kind of person that could ever fathom anything of God's wisdom is because of the humility that they have. That's who God gives the knowledge and the awareness of him. In other words, when we approach Torah with a sense of self-importance that leads us to, when I have a question on Rashi. Who's got the problem? Well, obviously Rashi has a problem because I don't get him. What is that saying? That's a haughty person that's talking. Right?
Mhm.
Because Rashi doesn't make sense. No, maybe Rashi doesn't make sense. Humility would say, I don't understand Rashi. I don't understand Rashi. I don't get it. Rashi makes sense. I just don't get it. I just don't get it. Rashi is, he gets it. I don't get it, right? So this is very interesting concept. And we say it every day, 3 times a day in the Amidah. At the end of the Amidah, say, Nafshi ka'ofer l'kol tiyeh psachli b'sorsecha. May my soul be like dust to all, open my heart to the Torah, to your Torah. That's what we pray for, that God should open our hearts. How? Because we're like dust. In other words, we have a sense of humility. How do you understand that? When you see great scientists, a great mathematician, or a great, scholar in any area, seldom will you see humility. Because the more you fill yourself with knowledge, the greater you become. The greater you become, and naturally so, you feel greater about yourself. And that's what happens. But here there's something a little different. And what's that? This is not about understanding human knowledge that's limited. So as a limited person, the more I drink the wisdom of the sciences, of the arts, and so on, the more I fill myself up with it. The Torah is of an infinite nature. It's God's wisdom. The only way I can access it is not by feeling myself full, but by feeling myself empty. And hence the truth is, the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. The more you realize you don't know. Because you dig deeper, more layers and layers. And that's as we learn Tanya now for a new cycle that we begin. We've learned it, we know it, not only sounds familiar, I could even repeat some of the things, right? But in our humility, we recognize there's so much more there. There's so much more there. Actually, interesting about Tanya, so it says, I'm quoting from the Tanya over here, the Rebbe Marash, Reb Shmuel, the 4th Rebbe, said, learning Tanya is like a goat looking at the moon. When a goat looks at the moon, you think it understands anything about the moon? Understands the orbit of the moon that's 28 days, 11 hours, and 48 minutes? Does it understand that it waxes and wanes? Does it understand anything about the gravitational pull? It understands nothing. That's how we are when we're learning Tanya, right? Torah in general, but this is Tanya in particular. He uses this as a metaphor. Yet, what does the moon do? It illuminates the way for the goat. The goat can find its way home at night. So we can find our way back. So recognizing, having humility means I'm recognizing the source of what I'm learning from, right? I'm recognizing the author. I'm knowing the author. And when you recognize that, then of course you sense that whatever you know is limited, and it doesn't fill you up. If it's a book, a science book, you got it down pat, you know it perfectly. It fills you, finished. The author of that book, he's another human being. No big deal, right? So of course it's just going to fill you up, and you're going to take that knowledge in, and you're going to know it. And you might know better than the author because you, for whatever reason, right? But here, the main thing about Torah is not the fact that I have information and I know and I fill myself up, but the main point of it is about its connection to the giver of the Torah, right? It's about getting acquaintance with God, connecting to God through the wisdom, through the knowledge. That's the point, right? With this, then we can understand how the brothers of Yosef are misguided. Did they get the information? Did they fill themselves up? Yes. But they were missing the spirit of the Torah. It's not just information. It's about a connection to God himself through the Torah. This we can understand the morning blessings that we make every day about the Torah. What's the blessing? Blessed are you, God, King of the universe, who has chosen us from all other nations, given us his Torah. Blessed are you, God, giver of the Torah. What's the emphasis over here?
Giver of the Torah.
Giver of the Torah. Not the wisdom of the Torah, not self-help of the Torah, not, I'm becoming a more accomplished individual through Torah, right? Are those things true? Yes. Is that the message? If that's the message we take, then we missed the boat. It's about the giver of the Torah. We must remember, connect before studying. Forgetting this perspective will ultimately lead to a perversion on how we understand the Torah. It'll lead to a perversion. To elaborate on this idea, the Bach gives us an explanation what the Torah tells us, the Talmud, based on the Jeremiah, Yirmiyahu, the prophet, who lived during the first Holy Temple and its destruction. And he was driven. Why? What happened? What did the Jews do? What was wrong? So he shares with us, Yirmiyahu. Who is the person so wise that can understand this? And who is the person to whom the mouth of God has spoken that they may declare it? Why is the land ruined and withered like a wilderness without anyone passing through? And God said, it is because they have forsaken my law, which I set before them, and they have not hearkened to my voice, nor walked by it. So what does it mean, forsaking my law? Did it mean they stopped observing Torah mitzvahs? No. That's not how the Talmud understands it. The Talmud explains. What does it mean? Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav, it means that the Jewish people stop making blessing on the Torah before studying it. They study Torah, right? And maybe they even made the blessing, but they rattle through the blessing. Like sometimes when we daven, we rattle through, right? Our minds are elsewhere, we rattle through. So what it means is they studied it because it was great wisdom. They studied it because it was very fulfilling. They studied it perhaps because of the great scholarship and great honor that it brings, perhaps that too. And this is what it means, they've forsaken my law. Not that they didn't fulfill it, they didn't keep it. They kept the law, but they forgot the spirit of the law. That you're connecting to God. It's not about self-fulfillment. It's not about self-enhancement. All those things are true. But that's not the main point. It's about the connection to the giver, to the author. That's the most important thing. To appreciate that through Torah, we connect to God himself. Indeed, this was lost.
I have a question.
Yes.
About what time, what period is Rabbi Yehuda saying this about? Because
He's talking about the first Holy Temple was destroyed in the 6th century before the Common Era.
so
So
this
Rabbi-
is at the times of the first Holy Temple. Isn't
No, the Talmud is later.
Right.
The Talmud is explaining the verse in Jeremiah.
Okay, so this is after the destruction of the first holy temple. So we're on to the second.
No, this is after even the second temple was destroyed.
Well, that makes sense.
These
Okay,
are
that makes
the men of the Talmud
All right,
who were from the 2nd century of the Common Era
right.
till the 6th century of the Common Era.
Okay.
500-year span that we have the authors of the Mishnah and the Gemara. Okay, clear? Good.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's also admonishing the rabbis here. It doesn't mean that the regular Jewish person. I mean,
Yeah, no, it means
he's
the scholar, even the scholars, even the
right?
scholars, yeah, even the scholars.
That's what he's saying.
Exactly.
Because the regular person was out there eking out a living, having lost their temple
Right.
and being dispersed. So who's left? I mean, who's he talking to? He's talking to the learned people.
Exactly.
Well, okay.
Yep.
There you go.
Exactly. Exactly. So the bottom line, that the spirit of the law is not about just coming up with what the law is, but it's about connecting to God. Right? It's about sensing that through this, it's God's wisdom that you are revealing in his teachings. That's what it is. So you're getting to know God through this. You're getting to connect to him through this, which is, of course, very powerful and all-encompassing. It takes in the entirety of the individual, right? Without this point, you're missing the point of what Torah is. Alter Rebbe teaches us, Tanya, in chapter 5, when a person understands something, the brain grabs onto the idea and surrounds it from all sides. In turn, their brain is also submerged entirely within the idea during those moments that they engaged in understanding it. For example, when a person properly studies a halacha or a mishnah or a gemara, their intellect grabs and surrounds the idea, and in turn, their intellect is also submerged within that idea. By doing so, they have grabbed and surrounded the wisdom and desire of God himself, which no brain can truly grasp. This is remarkable and unparalleled connection. This is a great quality of the mitzvah study of Torah, and know Torah over all of the other mitzvahs. So how foolish and almost pointless it is. It's not pointless to study Torah if you're doing it academically, because in the end, Torah, the truth of the Torah and the goodness of the Torah and the author of the Torah will come through eventually, and you will be connected to it. So even if you're not doing it for the right reason now, eventually you get there. So, but that being said, we don't approach it like an academic discipline, right? That would be missing the whole point. It's about connecting, and our brain is completely connected. What we are doing is making God's wisdom my wisdom, his vision my vision. So I now see things the way he is. He sees it. With this, now we can go back to our original question. Our original question was, why did the Torah choose to tell us that the borek ve'em b'mayim, that the pit was empty and there was no water in there? The Torah is trying to tell us something. It's conveying a message. If the water of life, the elixir of life, Torah, right? If you're empty of that, right? That there's no water, right? That flows from on high to the lowest point, and that's the lowest point is a pit, meaning the humility of the individual. That's lacking. You don't have the Torah that comes from the top on heavens above, just like water flows from the top of the mountain to the lowest point here being the pit, meaning there's no humility, there's no water there, there's no Torah there. Once you have no Torah there because you're not connecting to God through your Torah, then what you're going to get is snakes and scorpions. The Torah now will serve as it did for them as not a medicine of life, but a poison that kills. And that's why they made the wrong, this how they came to make the wrong decision, how the Torah is alluding to it and remember, we had the question, just say there's snakes and scorpions there. No, because the Torah has to teach us the lesson. There's no water there. There's no life. Water is life. There's no Torah there because there was no humility in that place. And because they didn't, they came and made a halachic ruling without the sense of humility. They're missing the whole point of Torah is to connect to God. And therefore, they're missing that in their halachic ruling. They just, cold facts that they're going with, not recognizing the author, the giver of the Torah. So therefore, they, in the end, made an inappropriate ruling. In the end, an inappropriate ruling that was completely off. The Rabbi explains in the Sikha this week. The whole point of the Torah is the connection it creates with its author, God, which is a direct result of the student's level of humility. As such, there is no middle ground. Either a person learns with commitment to the humility before the Torah's author and thereby hits the right note and truth of Torah as it exists in God's will, or God forbid, it can be the other way around. As soon as the commitment and humility is lacking, the student immediately loses the connection with Torah's author, and so automatically the snakes and the scorpions appear. Not only are they disassociated from Torah, they become a defying force to everything sacred. Wow. And that's where their mistake was. Clear? But this, we can connect this to the message of Hanukkah. The enemies of the Jews in Hanukkah were unlike most of the enemies of the Jewish people throughout the years, right? What was different? The Syrian Greeks, they didn't mind that we were Jewish. They didn't even mind that we studied Torah and we had a culture of our own, that we were different. They didn't mind. They were there. In fact, they were philosophers themselves. They appreciated that, you need different kinds of cultures and philosophies. They've got that. But what they couldn't tolerate is Torah and mitzvahs that is based on God. That it is human engagement, human intellect, right? Fill yourself up with meaningful teachings, right? Make yourself larger than life, greater, more humorous through your teaching, through your learning. That would be okay. But to give something to divine to the teachings, no. That they fought. And we see that in the Al Nisim prayers that we say. What do we say? In the prayer of Al Nisim on Hanukkah, we say, in the times of Matityahu, the son of Yechon, the high priest, Hashmonaim, and their sons, evil Greek empire rose up against your nation, Israel, and sought to make them forget your Torah. The previous Rebbe, he explains, what do you mean to forget your Torah? What do you mean, like, erase the memory of it? What does it mean, forget your Torah? Forget it's your Torah, God. The Greeks waged a spiritual war against the Jews. They weren't interested in genocide, but rather their primary goal was to make the Jews abandon the Torah of God. Their entire battle was aimed against the idea of Torah being from God, as well as an idea of mitzvahs as God's desire. They agreed that Torah was remarkable and wondrous intellectual property. After all, the Greeks were great scholars themselves, and they were able to recognize the great wisdom contained in Torah's laws. What they opposed was the notion that if it's God's Torah, namely the sanctity of Torah, as God's wisdom. For that reason, so much attention is paid to the miracle of oil, right? If the Greeks had an issue with the oil, why not just get rid of the oil? What did they do? They contaminated it, made it impure. It was still the same oil. Spiritually, they contaminated it. Now we got you. Made it. You could use that oil, right? And by the way, Jewish law, they could have used the oil because most of the people were impure because they came in contact with corpse, right? So the law is that the majority of the Jewish community is impure. You can serve the menorah up with impure oil. They didn't have to go up to the Galil and press new oil. But why did they do it? It's exactly because they wanted pure oil. Because exactly what the Greeks wanted to do. They wanted to destroy, not oil. They didn't mind. You want to light the menorah? Yeah, but it's going to be with impure oil, not holy, divine oil, right? So the Jews said, no. We are going to do with only pure, even though halachically we don't have to. But the whole spirit of the idea is they want to eradicate God from it, any spirituality, any divinity from the oil that is spiritually pure. We're going to make sure that we're only going to use pure oil. And hence they go up. 4 days up north, 4 days back with pure oil in order to negate the exact point of the Syrian Greeks, what they wanted to do to the Jews. Not to destroy us physically, right? They could tolerate us. That was unique about them. But God, divinity, no. So what's the message? Very plain and clear one. The Torah is unique and is a special and unique opportunity for us to connect with Hashem. We become a true oneness, as the Alter Rebbe writes in the 5th chapter of Tanya, a unique oneness, because mitzvahs, we clothe ourselves with a mitzvah, so to speak. Tefillin is on us, right? Mitzvahs are not in us. Torah is in us, is likened to food. Food you digest, it becomes your flesh and blood. Torah you digest, it becomes your wisdom and your knowledge, your vision. What's that? God's vision becomes our vision. His wisdom becomes our wisdom. Human, finite, limited people can now have the vision and the wisdom of God himself. That's the uniqueness of the study of Torah. And that's important for us to appreciate now, especially when we're starting a new cycle of learning Tanya, the importance of recognizing that it's about that attachment to Hashem through the teachings. Chaim l'chaim. Good to the last draw. That's good. Any questions? Any comments?
Yes, it says in Pirkei Avos, does it not, that a chassid goes above the letter of the law,
Yes.
which is the difference between maybe they were technically following a halacha, but they didn't have the spirit of the Torah.
Right. So, but that's another level where you're talking about the chassid that follows beyond the letter of the law. Is the person who is not the chassid is still has to have this awareness you're connecting to Hashem through the teachings. It's not just the chassid that would have that. But so what you're saying is correct. It's the same term, right? It's the same, of the spirit of the law, but it's a different idea, right? Here, it's fundamental, right? An awareness that through Torah that we are being attached to Hashem, to it, right? It's not like, beyond the letter of the law that you should fulfill that. No, that is, what's the proof? That's the bracha we make every day. The bracha is not beyond the letter of the law. It's telling us, this is, right? This is the spirit of the law. So beyond, actually, spirit of the law doesn't mean the chassid, the way you trans, it's a different term. There's the spirit of the law. It's not the being a chassid here. What you're saying is a chassid, another level completely. But yeah, thank you. Good point. Any other questions, comments, folks?
My thing is, how could so many of them, 10 of these Sadiqim,
6.
or 6 of them have gotten it so wrong? Yeah, so that's it. Why? What happened? With this
That's what happens when you don't have the humility. That's the whole point. When you, in other words, how did they lose their, the humility that perhaps they had was very simple. They were jealous. They were upset with him. So that led them off the wrong path. That when they did study Torah, in that moment of jealousy, this is what came up. In that moment of being upset with their brother.
So the result in their lives was snakes and scorpions. That's what it's.
Their study of Torah.
Yeah.
Their study of Torah. Well, and look what happened. And look what happened. It's doing. You need something? What's that? Tzedakah?
Change. There's so many things.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry for interrupting.
You know who it's from?
I should go.
You know who it's from?
It's gonna start.
Yeah,
I don't know.
we're finishing now. Okay, you'll let me know. Thank you. Yeah, we're just finishing up here. All right, folks. No other questions?
Was there a brother? I'm trying to think. Wasn't there Reuben who, for some reason, there was something
He made sure that they were sold, that he was sold.
Right.
That's what we learned that. We read that at the beginning.
Right. I thought
Right.
it said Yehuda.
No, no.
Who said let's not
Um,
pull him out. That's what this says, Judah. But I'm saying, well, what did Reuben do? He did something that was near to sin.
no, 1 second. No. I'm sorry. Yehuda said we shouldn't slay him. Reuven put him into the pit,
Okay.
right? And hoping to come back to get him out, actually, because he went to serve his father. But that's a whole different, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Yehuda, diminished the original plan, and Reuven even wanted to do more than that. Yeah, that's what's going on. All right, folks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Oh. Wait, who's joining us here today? Oh. All right, folks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.